Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to stage. He's an iconic businessman, Mr. Ho Kwon Ping. At 67 years of age, his is not an ordinary success story. He is the founder and executive chairman of Banyan Tree Holdings and the founding chairman of Singapore Management University. Mr. Ho's father, Ho Ri Hua, was the former ambassador to Thailand, but also ran the family business for a period. Wah Chang Group spanned construction, manufacturing, but Mr. Ho did not choose the family business as his first job. His first stab at employment was in my field, the field of journalism. And he was so good at it, he made history. His articles in the Far Eastern Economic Review criticizing Singapore led him to being detained under the Internal Security Act in 1977 at age 24. And after a 2-month detention period, you think he'd give up on journalism, I would. He went back to journalism, but soon moved on to becoming an academic. He did later join the family business, and after 10 years there, built Banyan Tree, along with his wife, Claire Chiang. The global hospitality brand currently has 48 hotels and resorts in some 25 countries, and his opinions continue to make headlines. Please welcome the wonderful Mr. Ho Kwon Ping.
I actually wondered when I was invited here, why are you inviting an ex-political detainee to advise people how to invest your money? I mean, I'm bewildered by this.
Listen, I wanted to bring that up because I think people, when they hear your name, think that everything you touch turns to gold. And that can be one-dimensional because you too have gone to trials and tribulations. And I wonder, how did you emerge from, what got you through solitary confinement? I mean, did you come out thinking, I'm going to be stronger than when I went in?
You want me to talk about solitary confinement? I actually wanted to say instead that the ad up there about buying a property at a resort, if it said buy Banyan Tree Resorts, definitely it's not a scam. We will give you guaranteed returns. And actually, the point here is that one of the points here is it is important who the issuer is of a financial product and the brand and reliability, because that very same kind of ad where I saw things like, be careful of guaranteed returns, we offer that. Be careful if the offer is too good and the price is low, we offer that. Be careful of high pressure tactics, we also say buy now. But thankfully, CAD, MES, and CIAS hasn't yet caught up with us, so we're okay.
That's wonderful. A number of investors, particularly the younger ones that we speak to, not only want to earn a good return, they want to know that their investments are helping to shape the planet and community in a positive way. So simply put, they want to invest for good. You once built desalination plants to turn seawater into fresh water to avoid damaging the fragile ecosystem near Banyan Tree projects. And Banyan Tree was founded with the core value of driving sustainable development. What advice do you have for investors who want to identify companies with that solid triple bottom line?
Well, there's a whole big topic about ethical investing. And I think the jury is still out as to whether those funds that specially invest only in companies that are supposed to be ethical actually get better returns or not. There have been quite a number of Nordic funds set up for this. I think the narrative is now turning the other way, that rather than having specially set up funds that only choose companies that are supposed to be ethical, which is a very, very diverse criteria, the other trend now is to actually try to convince more and more firms to simply be ethical, so that all firms would be practicing more sustainable and ethical behavior. I guess my one point from my own experience, I've been a detainee and I've gone through all kinds of problems, but I do in my other day job have financial responsibilities. And we have a family office and I have a responsibility to invest in there. And I think one of the messages I would give to people, because we have made as many bad financial investments as we have good ones. And I think that message was partly underlined by previous speakers and so on. And that is that really you should not, greed is probably your worst enemy here. It is very, very difficult over the long term to really beat the market in terms of market return. And even GIC, and I was on the board of GIC for 10 years, and GIC is our sovereign wealth fund, which is one of the best investors in the world. GIC would be very proud if they can consistently get a rate of return on their investments that would be consistently 1.5%, 2% higher than the market rate or the Morgan Stanley rate and so on. So you will find that a lot of individual personal investors would put in their money because they hear rumors from friends that, oh, I put in this particular investment and I can get a 25% return, and they'll go and do it without recognizing that their portfolio, their resources are somewhat limited. And they put in too much money in something that they hear is going to give them that big chance in life and make a bundle of money. You may do it once or twice, but generally our family office's view about investment is it's really just trying to incrementally increase whatever wealth you have so that you can continue to pursue your other passions in life. The day you become, unless you're a professional hedge fund manager or a really professional investor, the day you as an individual who's busy doing all other kinds of things think you're going to make money that's going to be abnormally high, I think you're going to be coming in for a bad fall. And so for our own family office, we're quite conservative. We try to grow our portfolio as much as we can, but we know we're not going to really substantially beat the market. If we can just even stay a little bit higher than the market, we're really very lucky.
I wonder if you can give us a view from the inside of a business known for its sustainability. So how do you balance the drive towards sustainability and the demands of the stock market? Say it's a tough quarter, revenue falls, profits are down. Does a decline put pressure on the company's aim for sustainability in favor of appeasing investors?
Well, there's a whole, thankfully there's a whole new thinking now. On our part, as individuals, my wife and I have always been more concerned about corporate social responsibility and sustainability because we didn't come out of business schools, even though the irony is now I run a business school. But we were more involved in economic development, social development, and so on. So all the issues that drove us. And Banyan Tree was a vehicle for that. But now, thankfully, more and more companies and societies are embracing the idea of sustainability. And I've always advocated that the whole corporate domain would change if you simply substituted one word for another. Now, the old mantra had always been that the responsibility of boards and CEOs is to maximize shareholders' returns. If you simply substituted the word shareholder with stakeholder, a one-word change, I think you completely reorientate the entire mission of a company and the CEO. And then you can get into a very deep and substantive discussion within each company as to who are the stakeholders of the company and how much weightage they should have. And obviously, shareholders should always be ranking among the very top, perhaps even more than 50%. But then for every company itself, they can give weightage to other stakeholders, the broader community, your customers, your employees, your suppliers, and so on. And if you actually consciously give a value and a weightage to that, that can become the basis of remuneration plans for CEOs and executives. And I think in the longer term, it will also make that company a better company to invest in. Because we have seen too many examples, particularly in the United States, of companies that have been focused purely on short-term returns that benefits essentially senior management and CEOs. And at the end of the day, well, it benefits investment banks who make a lot of money from mergers and acquisitions. It benefits the private equity funds. And all of them offload their investments to the unsuspecting retail investor in some IPO or the other. And you look at WeWork, you look at Uber, the unsuspecting retail investor is the guy holding the bag right now. And I think it behooves all of us as retail investors to push back and to recognize we are not going to be the idiots who are there to catch the bag when all the investment banks and the private equity funds invest smart, and then they unload it on the so-called dumb investor who's going to buy into some hyped-up product.
You've said in a media report, when people ask me what is the essence of leadership, it boils down to a three-letter word, three-alphabet letter word, and that is why. Asking why. Your book speaks to a critical mindset. And I wonder if there is anything from the book that you think investors here can learn from.
Yeah. Ask yourself, why is this particular investment so good? And as has been said before, be skeptical. I mean, in my book, I talked about how skepticism and asking why is the basis of all leadership, political, socioeconomic, scientific leadership with Galileo and Einstein challenging the norms of the day, Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela challenging the norms of the day. You've got to be always ready to not just believe the orthodoxy. And you have to ask why. If somebody comes to you and offers you a product that seems to be so good, ask yourself, why is it so good? Or am I the last fool standing? And don't be greedy. You know, if you can get 2%, 2% higher than the market norm over the long term, you're doing very well. And every time I see people come to me about a bad investment, you ultimately ask them, why did you do it? And their answer will be, well, I thought I could make more money this way.
You're a well-known opinion maker, and you spent 3 years living in Hong Kong. Investors and the market are still taking in that image of the Christmas tree burning at Festival Walk in Kowloon, owned by Singapore-based Mapletree North Asia Commercial Trust. How do you see things shaping up in Hong Kong?
You expect me to answer that when PM at a Forbes conference, and I was there, made some very mild and, in my view, very studied and careful remarks, and DBS Bank got burnt down and so on. You expect me to say anything about Hong Kong? I mean, the only thing I can honestly say, without saying anything about Hong Kong, I was born there. I spent many years there. Banyan Tree is named after a bay in Hong Kong. It's named after Banyan Tree Bay, Yongshu Wan or Rongshu Wan in Lama Island. I go to Hong Kong regularly. We have investments there. And I mean, I am amazed by what's going on because I think Hong Kong people are really a very exciting group of people. And I just can't understand what is happening there. But I think the main takeaway I have about Hong Kong is not to comment on them. It's to reflect on what's happening there and to see how lucky we are as a society that we have our own sovereignty, so that if we have unhappiness, we can express it in the ballot box, not like many of the young people today, and they cannot. That we have, whether you are a PAP supporter or not, we clearly have a responsible and accountable government. We have property tycoons who are screaming their heads off because they're not making the money that they would like to make, and a government that is consciously suppressing property prices for the sake of our population, versus a government which is essentially in the complete control of property tycoons. So I just look at what Hong Kong is today, and I am glad that the pioneer fathers that we had, that the pioneering generation created all the institutions that we are continuing to benefit from today. And I just feel the responsibility that we have to recognize that in the same way that Hong Kong is burning overnight, something has just happened, that same thing can happen in Singapore. And we cannot assume that all the peace and harmony we've created, multiculturalism and so on, is so solid and so firm that we cannot one day be another Hong Kong. So that's my major takeaway from Hong Kong.
Well, thank you for that. So if we look ahead to 2021, that's when Banyan Tree's newest high property, Dawah Bukit, is scheduled to open. Do you see a growing use of mixed-use developments? Investors might be interested in that.
Well, we have now about 5 brands, and quite a number of them can coexist in mixed-use developments, not just the Dawah product. But essentially, the main story about the development of Banyan Tree is that people mistakenly identify us only with the Banyan Tree brand itself. And that's perhaps because the company is also called Banyan Tree. And the Banyan Tree brand itself is clearly a very high-end boutique product, quite expensive and so on. But what has really excited me as a sort of economist or student of economic development is that the big story in Asia today is the rise of a middle class, an aspiring middle class that has got consumption power. And towards that end, we have developed 4 or 5 other brands. We have multi-branded platform, we have multi-branded property sales that can actually capture both the super wealthy, but more importantly, also the new middle class in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, and so on. And after having heard this pitch, if you go out and buy Banyan Tree shares, this is not insider trading, and CS will not hold you to it, okay?
Why did you choose Phuket as the Southeast Asia launchpad?
Totally coincidental. I mean, half of the things in my life have been coincidental. The other half has been intentional. And any businessman who thinks they're successful and you ask them, what's the secret of your success? And if they tell you, it's all due to me and my foresight, then don't believe the guy.
That's great.
Half the time it's all due to luck. It's timing, you know? I mean, it's timing. I think I've been lucky, just as other times I have been unlucky. I think I work pretty hard, but in my whole life of working pretty hard, a few times I got lucky and I did really well. A few times, such as ISD, I didn't do so well. But when Phuket was, I mean, it's too long a story to get into an investment conference, but it was totally a fluke that we got into it.
Wow.
And I had never gone to business school. I'd never heard of the word due diligence. So I never did due diligence, we just bought it. So my other point here is if you're going to make an investment that's speculative, make sure it's cheap so that if you go wrong, you don't lose too much. And when we did it with Phuket, we never knew it would develop to what it is today, which is a very highly successful integrated destination resort that's got billions of dollars, truly billions of dollars of development potential. When we bought it, I had no clue, but it was cheap. So don't buy anything, don't risk yourself on buying something super expensive and hope that it will do better. If you're going to risk anything and do a stab in the dark, buy something you can easily afford to lose. And that was actually one mantra my father gave to me, which I think was very wise. And I always remember it because I continue to have to make investments, whether it be financial investments or project investments. And he always said, whenever you calculate an investment, don't even bother to calculate how much money you can make, how much profit you can make. Calculate how much you can lose before it really hurts you. That should be your criteria for investment.
Great insights here. I wonder if you can share, looking ahead, everybody's talking about disruption and volatility. What are the main headwinds that you see ahead for global hoteliers?
I think hoteliers face the same type of problems as everyone else. There's technological disruptions, obviously, will disrupt a lot of the traditional structures of hotels. But the overall consequence of this is consolidation. You've seen massive consolidation across virtually all industries. Steel mills are consolidating. Banks are consolidating. Hotel companies have had massive consolidation with 2 of the world's largest companies, Marriott and Starwood, merging into one. So the real question for us is that as an independent but aspiring global player, how do you remain independent? And for us, we think we found a way by forging strategic alliances with the Accor Hotel Group and with the Chinese developer, Wanke. But they only have 5% in our company, and we have strategic alliances with them. So in the new world, I think, in a way, I think it's true for Singapore as much as for our small company. And that is for Singapore to remain independent and relevant in this world when Singapore is such a small player as a nation, as Banyan Tree is as a hotel company. the way to survive is to build strategic alliances, number one, as we hope to do, and at the same time, to identify a niche where you bring value to the market as a whole, and where Singapore as a whole brings value to the rest of the world. So there are certainly a lot of parallels of smallness for nations as well as for companies. But it does not mean that in a period of massive disruption and consolidation, it does not mean that smallness is a disadvantage. It can also be turned around to be an advantage because you can be more nimble and you can also survive when the giants are battling it out against each other.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying yourself so much. I have 1 minute left on the clock of your time, Mr. Ho. We know you're a very busy man. I want to leave you the last word. What would you like to say to investors here today?
I mean, besides buying a resort product, I can go on for 10 minutes. If you want, I can show a video. Our share price is at rock bottom today, so you can't go wrong if you buy cheap. And I'm looking at, my God, David's going to really start a lawsuit against me now for fraudulent propaganda. I guess my major message would be this, is that all of us have our little nest egg that we want to increase over time. But we should always look at it in the proper perspective. That the increase of whatever nest egg we have, whatever investable assets that we have, we should seek to invest it so that we can get slightly better returns from the market in order to enable the rest of our lives to have meaning and purpose. When the day comes that your view of life and your intention in life is overtaken by the idea of making a lot of money on the cheap, an easy way, I think that's going to be the source not only of disaster for yourselves, but also of unhappiness for yourselves. I think making money is great, but make money by enjoying it and doing it wisely, and do not risk anything. I remember one thing very well. I mean, I come from an entrepreneurial family. My father would make some money. My mother demanded it from him, and she maintained a separate set of accounts, which she would use to grow the money a little bit at a time and so on. And she actually refused. At times of great stress, my father would go to my mother and say, look, can you give us some money? Give me some money and invest in this great, great business. And she would probably say, that's fraudulent. It's not going to happen. Because she had to keep that money essentially for the children. So they were starting out not well off in life at all. So I would just simply say, bear the same thing in mind. I have seen too many cases of people who have not maybe lost everything, but lost a lot of money. And when you treat money in such a way that it's something you invest in to make a lot of money, you end up losing a lot of money at the same time. Take making money as something you should do after you've got a safe amount set aside. And then you've got a balance left over. You can be a day trader. You can be up there in a coffee shop and buy some banyan tree shares and sell some banyan tree shares. But you won't make a lot of money from it. It's just for day trading.
Mr. Ho Kwon Ping, ladies and gentlemen.